Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men have asked me for the right words to say to be more attractive, desirable, and more of a leader. And I've found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines. Because at the root of a connected and affectionate relationship and being more effective and inspiring at work is your ability to influence others. But most often, influence is not gained or lost with words. It's from what I call the invisible factors. So I created a quick guide for you called 3 Ways Men Lose Influence at Work and with Women, so you can understand how these invisible factors work and what has women and colleagues both more inspired to say yes. I think you're also going to be surprised to find out the moment when your influence actually begins. So grab the guide for free at shanajamescoaching.com/3ways. That's shanajamescoaching.com/3 and the word ways, WAYS. Or you can text ALIVE to 44144. That's the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144. I hope you enjoy the guide and this episode. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I am excited to be here today to talk about money and how to be in integrity with your money, how to align money with what is meaningful to you, and something that my guest calls the clean money revolution. So Joel Solomon, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
I'm very pleased to be here with you. Thanks.
Joel is the author of The Clean Money Revolution, Reinventing Power, Purpose, and Capitalism. And he's a co-founding partner of Renewal Funds, serves as a senior advisor with the RSF Social Finance, speaks frequently through North America. He's a founding member of the Social Venture Network, Business for Social Responsibility. I mean, I could go on and on. You've done so much. And Joel's also received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Social Venture Network and was recently inducted into the Social Venture Network Hall of Fame. And, you also speak regularly to investors and wealth managers across the US and Canada. So I just want to thank you. I was moved to tears watching one of your videos. And I just felt so touched that you have taken it on as your life mission to help clean up money and to help people do good things with their money. So thank you so much.
Thank you for noticing and caring.
Yeah. It's clear to me that you want to make the world a better place, and you invest in companies you think make a difference to the future. I was reading you've directed over $100 million in in people's investments, but also influencing billions. Well, let's start with how you got here, right? How did you open up to this mindset of actually realizing that money could be used in ways that are meaningful instead of just, for profit or for power?
There's a story about maleness and femaleness and things under this, since this is the theme of your show. So I will mention that, which was a lot of confusion in the 50s and 60s. I grew up in the southern United States. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
We were deep in the thick of Jim Crow and the pre-civil rights era, or I kind of lived into that. And I had a father who was child of an immigrant and worked hard to make his way in American society, and he was successful with that. Among other things, the family owned a chain of movie theaters that included the first colored theater in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so things like that added a lot of confusion for me as just a kid. What does this mean, and why do people have separate water fountains and bathrooms and stuff like that? So my mother was much more of an iconoclast and a questioner. And she became an artistic photographer. She remains doing that at age 88 and has been a very important influence on my life. So from the feminine side of, certainly with the female side, my mother gave me a bit of a questioning mind. Mm-hmm. So when I began and went through my teens and then early 20s, I got very perplexed about, well, what's the meaning of life and what should I do with myself? And I looked a lot at the origins of things like, okay, how did my people get to this continent?
Mm.
And who else came here and who came first and what was that about? And so it was also the era of the beginning of feminism and the questioning of some of the values of what's man, what's woman, and
Yeah.
what are the relationships, what's good, what's bad about it. And I came to realize that men had dominated most of history, certainly the visible part of history,
Hmm.
and that when I really looked at what had happened, things from building a lot of capitalism in the U.S. on slavery and on domination and wars and these kinds of things, which I guess I could look back and understand contextually, humanity trying to understand itself and figure out how to be
Hmm.
here. But in any case, the summary of that is I came to think that maybe the way that humans came from basically uncivilized to civilized, well, I'll just accept for the moment that it required whatever it required, and then here we are today asking
Yeah.
questions. I don't think that it's necessary anymore to act as if everything is scarcity and danger.
Mm.
For many people, it remains that way, but those of us that have affluence and access to things
Hmm.
actually have huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So when I thought about money and where it came from and why did my family end up with money and what was I supposed to do about money, it became clear that it is really just a neutral substance, that trading of goods and services has always happened, but that
Hmm.
there were some things that really needed to be questioned about this concept of just endless accumulation of money without looking at the impact on people and places.
Yeah.
And so in my early 20s, I came to the fact that I had access to a business family, good education, white male with all kinds of privileges, and that the meaning and purpose of life was actually to do the most that we could for
Mm.
the future
Yeah.
and for the whole. So a journey influenced by many people, books, social figures, things like that. I just decided that I had to think of some other ways to do things.
Yeah, I mean, and I know you were influenced by, illness and not even knowing how long you were going to live. And
Yeah.
I just love that one of the videos I was watching, you were talking about really wanting to be a good, how did you put it? A good ancestor, right? Like that,
Yes,
recognizing that people have been ancestors for us and made things possible, and that you
that's
actually
right.
are thinking of future generations and, want to leave things as good, as healthy, as well as you can for them.
That's right. And I've lived through a global population of over 3 billion to a global population pushing 8 billion now.
Wow.
And that's in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty intense.
Yeah.
And it raises new kinds of responsibilities.
Hmm.
And to the degree that men hold as much power as we do, therefore the bar is even higher for us.
Hmm. Hmm. You were saying that you believe that the economy will be reinvented and that there will be this massive renewal of how we understand money. And I'm wondering if you can say more about that.
I believe that my name is now on the money that is represented in my pocket by some bills and coins and plastic that lead to, of course, all kinds of other things that represent my money.
Hmm.
And where the money comes from that gets to me and how it affected people and places, and then what I do with the money, similarly, how will it affect people and places, is an actual responsibility. It's a moral and ethical and humanity responsibility that we know
Mm.
this. We're in a system right now that has given us a pass card, so we don't have to think about that. But I
Yeah.
believe the future, as we start to collapse some of the systems that keep us alive, as we get so many people on the planet and we try to deal with modern technology and the capacity to do damage to ourselves and others that's greater than it's ever been in planetary history, the capacity. And we have to move to an age of more enlightened behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, money being the primary tool of exchange and the representation to many people of self-worth, it goes
Yeah.
beyond just security to I am only a strong, good human if I have a lot of it. is something that we're going to have to be wise and shift to a new, broader view.
Yeah. Do you have any suggestions? Because that's a big shift to make for a lot of people. I mean, for most of us, right, there is this, it's been ingrained in us that how much we make is directly related to our self-worth. And I think it's a problem.
Well, the couple of things about that. Number one is we should be rational and practical. If we're going to go to 10 billion people and we're going to, we're going to put a lot of pressure on the systems, we have to be wiser. So if we're going to be wiser, it causes us to go back and look through the economic system, how we do all of those things, and how we start to think more collectively.
Yeah.
That sounds like a fantasy, an idealistic fantasy, given certain things that are showing up in politics and across the landscape globally. However, that doesn't relieve us of the responsibility to have to get there.
Yep.
So there are a couple of key questions that helped me that I like to present for others. One is, okay, I like money. I love making money. I love the ingenuity, the validation. I enjoy the things I can do with money. I've learned to enjoy things I can do with money that I believe are meaningful rather than just self-indulging. But there's a question that should be asked underneath this, which is, how much is enough? So I've spent time during my life to consider that at different periods. And what do I think is enough? And can I be satisfied if I get enough money? Then I could go for infinite love or infinite good deeds or infinite friends. Or,
I love that you just jumped from money to love and friends, right?
Yeah, and I really concluded that when I was diagnosed with a fatal disease, a degenerative kidney disease, and I had to think about the fact that I would die either soon or later, what did I want to be known for? And so the accomplishment, everything was about be a billionaire. And I came around to, I would like to be a billionaire of good deeds or a billionaire of love. I think I'll get much more satisfaction from that, and I'll be a better person.
Yeah. And okay, so I think this is beautiful and aligns with my values. And I'm imagining that men listening, it's like sometimes putting food on the table or being financially responsible for a household or, in the daily grind, this can be challenging. So when you say what is enough, which I imagine is, very different for every person. I live in the Bay Area, so what is enough here is ridiculous compared to what's enough in other places. What do you suggest for that and how they can take on this mindset?
So first of all, obviously, when in theory on a podcast and speak could be 7 billion people, any one of them might hear it. So it's hard to do generalizations. But first is to acknowledge those, maybe half the planet's population, living on a few dollars a day and needing to take care of their kids and feed them and put a roof over their heads and find some kind of fulfilling life beyond just survival. I have to speak differently there. I completely understand. I completely empathize. I would be doing whatever I could to take care of myself and my family needs. Yeah. But there's the other, probably maybe half, maybe a quarter of us, many of whom would be listening to a podcast like this, who actually have access to education and clean water and safe streets and education and all these kinds of things. And those are the ones of us that really have to ask how much is enough. Yeah. And there's a common thing that gets said is, well, I want to make more because I'll give it away and I'll do good things. Unfortunately, too often that doesn't happen. Yeah. We give away a bit, but then we want more because we're competing or who knows why. And so I think it's a psychological, emotional, and spiritual question, and that we have the ability to become more enlightened about this and balance it all.
Okay, that's good. I mean, I appreciate too the response you gave to some grad students who asked you for, business advice about being a successful entrepreneur, and you went back to, right? You have to work on your psychological and emotional and spiritual and relational skills, not just, money as this be all end all, right? Or how you can make money, that this is all connected.
That's right. And to the degree that we are speaking to or about men here, men have been in charge for quite a while. And we have done many amazing things. And we also actually have done a lot of things that history might look poorly on.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to also think about those things and how we can devote all of our smarts and our strength and our effectiveness to making the world better for everyone.
Yeah.
So we live in an era right now. I sorry to make this time dated, but we're in the middle of a Supreme Court nomination
Mm-hmm.
in the US, and we're looking at very deep issues about
Yeah.
certain kinds of male privilege and behavior that have been societally supported.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the results of that actually show up too well if we stop and think about it.
Yeah.
A lot of the challenges that we're facing may have to do with poorer choices that were just structurally made, that were bigger than ourselves, but which ultimately we become responsible for in all of our relations. So this psychological and emotional spiritual would be the most overlooked part of what it takes to be a successful human. And there's a psychology profession, and there are major global religions, and there's spiritual practices, and all of this is going on. But we still do not, too many of us don't value those at the top of the priority. And my premise is that if a man or a woman or a gender fluid person,
Right. Yeah.
Anyone is going to look at the deepest questions. Who am I aspiring to be in terms of the qualities, the values, and the legacy that I will leave behind? And how do I relate to the people around me? So that requires this more inner work to think about. Winning is one thing, but what's the quality of the results of that success that actually are what live longer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can feel my mind, in a way, just kind of opening, and there's a little more space to take this all in and try to understand it, or try to find a new way of looking at money. And another thing that you wrote was that there's an unbelievable amount of money in the world, actually enough money to solve poverty and climate change. And I'm wondering, well, how do you know that? And what would get us closer to actually using money in those ways? Like, what would we have to do?
Well, first, in terms of the more factual side of this, which is how much money is there, we have successfully, and capitalism has done a very good job of monetizing more and more and more of life itself. Mm-hmm. Now we're down to monetizing our attention. And we are studying infants almost at conception. We are commercially studying them to figure out what will make them tick and how we will sell them more stuff, sell ourselves more stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of that's brilliance and it's genius, but it needs a new moral and ethical view of why and what. So there are trillions of dollars, literally. Global economy gets named in the trillions, and national economies get named in the trillions. And if you just do the simple math, the amount of money now floating around the planet is gigantic. Too much of it is concentrated and poured into very exploitive and damaging things that create problems, even increase the problems that we're having to overcome. Yeah. So I think there's enough money. I think there's plenty enough money. In the US and Canada, if you add Mexico to it, in the next 3 decades, North America will pass on $50 trillion will pass from my generation to younger generations. That will be through death. And so globally, it's got to be 100 trillion, and it's probably bigger than that, the entire global economy and net worth and value of things. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's a lot of money. Yeah. Why can we use it to solve what needs to be solved? Well, because we make choices, we choose governments. Governments make further choices influenced by the powerful interests that influence them. And my belief is that if those of us who least need it keep getting tax benefits, reductions in taxes, those of us who most need it keep getting cuts in social services and safety nets, we create a very dangerous situation for everyone. Yeah. And so I don't know that trillions of dollars will solve these things, but I believe they could. They won't do it just alone. There needs to be mindset, heart set, emotional set.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense to me, right? I mean, there is a lot of money, but as you said, people tend to, once they have a certain amount of money, want more or feel
Correct.
like, right now I'm in this, upper echelon maybe, and I bought a house, but it's not as big as someone else's house, or my car
Yeah.
isn't as nice, or any of those things. And it sounds like what you do with your renewal funds is give people an opportunity to invest in companies that are making healthy choices for the future. Is that true?
That's our intention, and that one, and our job there is to make money for our investors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm, I am involved in the capitalist system very heavily, and
Right.
it is what we have right now, and it can be turned in good directions. So our job is to find companies that matter, entrepreneurs who truly care, and support those kinds of companies to make the incremental and hopefully larger than incremental changes in each part of society that we can touch.
Uh-huh. That's beautiful. And is that what you mean by the clean money revolution, or are we missing pieces of that?
I think the deeper part of the clean money revolution does start with this kind of, uh, first of all, worldview, psychological, emotional, and spiritual. Is it not, what are the ethics and morals of me being able to ignore how my money might be causing damage to other people and other people's places? Is that actually okay? I believe that responsibility for how we make our money in the form of regulations and taxes and laws are something we need. A governing of the commons. We can't just have open, like everybody go for it.
Yeah.
So we have that, but we also work very hard and manipulate it. And that is where kind of, I guess, human nature gets into the question of how do we create enlightened people? And if men are dominating things and dominating those decisions still, how do we create enlightened men becomes a super important priority.
Right. Right. Yes. I'm attempting to work on that one. um, and what crossed my mind was I've been thinking recently, and, part of the mission of Man Alive is to support men in the places where they feel like they're dying inside. And some men have been on the verge of suicide, or, have considered it at a time in their lives, or just been depressed, or any of that, whatever range or realm of that. And I'm thinking about how money is a huge contributor to that. I've seen men commit suicide after financial loss and that fear of, oh my God, how am
Yes.
I going to take care of my family? And so I'm just realizing and recognizing we're talking on these different levels, right? Of having or having, not having. And that these days, even someone who's considered to have enough money, it's like it's barely, right? Especially, where I am, it seems like it's barely enough.
Yeah. Yeah. We've accelerated this circumstance that I've been attempting to be articulate about to serious crisis point.
Yeah.
We gave up. I mean, there's something about the concept of what we call the free market and the attitude that everybody takes care of themselves, looks out for themselves, and we've denigrated the public service and the regulatory and balancing role of that which is there to protect the commons.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now in the United States, we're going to potentially, depending on how elections turn out, we're going to debate whether Social Security, whether Medicaid, whether taking care of people that are suffering, welfare, housing, are these things rights, or are they just for the strong and everyone else go
Mm-hmm.
live as barbarians out in the streets or something? And this is where men have such a huge good news story available, which is, to the degree that we do influence so many things, how do we influence things for the well-being of the long-term future rather than the immediate self-aggrandizement that tends to be the ethic right now?
Yeah. Okay. So if we put this on a really concrete level, then how do you suggest that a man who has enough,
Yeah.
and maybe it's barely enough, or maybe it's a little more than enough, and he feels like, okay, I can save for my own retirement and take care
Yeah.
of my family, but maybe not a lot more than that.
Yeah.
How do you suggest he make choices to support, a more meaningful economy?
Well, you asked, there was a lot of questions in there. I'll take it this way, which is so I think I would argue that we might want to have a goal of happiness and satisfaction in a sense that we have done something meaningful with our lives.
Yeah.
If we focus on that, in other words, you might call it what's our spiritual path or what's our meaning and purpose path.
Mm-hmm.
So self-inquiry and questioning and putting ourselves in places, reading books, talking to therapists, being open to people with other points of view. It's if you go through the exercise of how much is enough, then we have to look at how many kids am I going to have? How many houses do I need to have? How many? What do I need to consume? Why do I need to consume it? And if we're attached to being at the very top of those food chains, okay, that's one life. If we're attached to, I want satisfaction, I want love, I want good relationships, I want peacefulness, I want health. Well, you can get those with very different amounts of money. Then how can I be the master of the universe and the smartest guy that was ever alive and I'm the winner?
Yeah.
So you got to do self-examination and come to terms with where will satisfaction come from? Mm-hmm. So I'll stop there.
No, I think it's good. I mean, in some ways, right, it does keep going back to, I think I can imagine being in a spin, and I've been there myself, as a single mom, and right, trying to figure out, okay, how does this all work, and how does satisfaction in a life of meaning overlap with money? So, but I am appreciating that question, and actually, I had a mentor ask me that question many years ago, after my divorce, like, how much is enough versus how much would you actually love to have? And it took a lot of the stress out of that moment in my life when I realized, okay, sure, I'd like to make this amount, but actually if I had this amount, my son and I are going to be okay.
I've thought through these questions for myself, because in the sense of, am I just living in some kind of dream bubble because I'm lucky and it goes well for me? And so I think through, and now with my awesome wife, we have a big sprawling family. And so there are lots of things we could want to take care of, but we go through, first of all, what if? And so I do go through the what ifs on a periodic basis. Oh, I could live much simpler than this. Mm-hmm. I could live in a different place. Mm-hmm. I could, on and on like that. So I do like to assess, do I have enough? And then if I do, I'd like to put my energy towards, I'm okay if more comes, because I will do things with more, and I do things with more that are more satisfying than pure accumulation. Mm-hmm. I like to put that money to work out in the world doing things that matter. So it's very realistic to assess what kind of affluence, what kind of lifestyle. And once we get attached to being in the richer ones, it's harder to disattach. But I did things like think about, well, what are my basic skills? What would anyone want? Why would anybody want to keep me around? Mm-hmm. And so then I start to think about, well, the human skills, and how valuable human skills actually are.
Yeah.
Because if we can be a decent person and relate to other people, our chances that we will find safety net are far stronger. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So anyhow, all of this is not simple to answer, but there's paths of inquiry on it, and it's being on the paths of inquiry that matter the most, because that's the doorway.
Yeah. So true. Okay, before we wrap up, what is there anything we missed? I mean, of course we could it's been years talking about this, so it's not like we're going to cover everything, but is there anything we missed that you really want men to know?
That the forms that we've been trained by the entertainment industry, the commercial, the sales of products, the model of what masculinity and manhood look like, that we've effectively been trained by people and situations that are attempting to manipulate us to turn us into harvestable, farm animals kind of thing. In other words, when I realized, I, as a teenager, I started smoking cigarettes, and I was up to 2 packs a day by the time I hit 20. And I had a day of revelation when I realized that people could hear me coming from a block away because of my cough. And that all of my thoughts were planning for the cigarettes. And do I have the cigarettes with me, and don't I? And am I going to run out? And things like that. And then I had a view of some guys in suits sitting in a tall tower in North Carolina with the cigarette company, just laughing and just chalking me up on a chart. And that they were just going to make money for the rest of their lives as long as I carried this on. So there are a lot of things that are society, that are manipulating us, that if we don't pay attention to and at least see them for what they are, then we just get sucked up in it. So the point is, take time to look at what you think right now reality is based on, and why you want what you want, and question it and see if you like working for that master. Wow. Or if you'd like to have more independence.
Wow. Okay. That is a deep line of inquiry I really appreciate. Yeah. It's almost like, okay, I don't even know what to say in this moment, as that just blows my mind and heart open. Thank you for that.
Let your heart and mind be blown open and see what that feels like and what the true feelings are around that. And that is another secret entry point into more mastery over being a human.
Thank you. Thank you. And where can men find you, find your book?
joelsolomon.org. I'm spelled with all O's in Solomon. And I'm on most of the major social medias in my name. I got lucky that way. I got in early enough. And renewalfunds.com if you're interested in seeing what mission venture capital looks like.
Great. And the Clean Money Revolution, I imagine, is sold on Amazon or some other.
Clean Money. That's what joelsolomon.org is a website about the book. And yes, it's sold everywhere, or you can ask for it and you'll get it. And I'm going this afternoon for another reading at the Vancouver Public Library so I can do a spoken word, because that seems like a really cool thing to also have.
Awesome. That sounds great. Great. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
Such a pleasure.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope it gives you a sense of what's possible and how good your life can be. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe to Man Alive and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/manalive to get outtakes, videos, and raw footage I only share there. These are some of the most interesting parts of these expert conversations. You can also grab your copy of The Unknown Power to accelerate your career and solidify your confidence with women, because the two are related, and I know you don't have to settle for one or the other. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.